In this video, we are going to build the daily task tracking application with Supabase, and we are going to implement all the CRUD operations in this application. Let's get started. First, in this application, we are going to initialize Supabase and then perform CRUD operations, and lastly set policies to allow anonymous users. And let's head on to Supabase official site and start with our new project. And when we create the project, we can provide the project name and select a region. So I am going to keep the region as the recommended one and also put a database password as well. To use Supabase in our application, we need Supabase Flutter package, and let's install that as well. And in the Flutter project, I have removed all the boilerplate code. Now in the home screen file, we only have a scaffold with a text widget. So in the main.dart file, in the main function, we have to add a widget flutter binding ensure initialized. And after that, we have to call the Supabase initialize function. There the most important thing is this URL and the anon key, which you can find in the Supabase project overview. So under the project APIs, you can find the project URL and also the API key or otherwise anon key. And let's copy these values and add those into our project now. I already have added those values at the top. So now we have to do is provide respective value at the initialize function. Okay, great. So for the initialization part, that is all. So the next thing we are going to do is create the task module class. Before doing anything here, let's go and create our table in Supabase. So go to table editor and then create a table, and I'm going to name this table as tasks. And in the columns, we have ID field already. And we are going to add another field to hold the task name as task, and also is done field to hold the boolean value. And we are going to keep the row level security enabled and also real-time feature disabled. So let's save these changes now, and we can see our table has been created. Now in the Flutter project, in the task class, we are going to create all the fields we need. And the next thing we need is one function to convert our database result into the task object that application understands, and also another function to convert task object into the map literal that database understands. So let's create those two. And this is all we need in the task model class now. And let's create another file to handle database operations so that we can keep it outside of the UI. So I already have created this database service.dart. So I'm creating the database service class. Here what we need to implement is a function to fetch data and insert data and then update data as well as delete data. To get access to all these methods, we need Supabase client. So let's create another variable to hold that. And also I'm going to create another variable to hold the table name, which is not a good practice, but for the demo purposes we are going to keep it hard coded here. Alright, now in the fetch data function we need to call Supabase from, and then we have to give the table name, and then we have to call the select method. And as you can see, it returns list of map values. Let's store that in a variable. This is going to be asynchronous function, and from this fetch data function what we need to return is list of task values so that our application can show them. So let's now convert this data into list of tasks, and we can use from map function to map it into our task object. And this returns a iterator. So to convert it into list, let's call toList method. And in the insert row method, what we need to call is Supabase from table name and then insert function. And let's take the new task as an input to our function. And since this is asynchronous function, let's await it and make it asynchronous. And here let's pass new task as a map. And to convert it, we can use the toMap method we implemented earlier. And in the updated row function, we have to call Supabase and then from table name, and then we can call the update method. Here also let's take the updated task as input to the function, and similar to insert, we'll convert it into a map. And to identify which row needs to be updated, we are calling this equal method with the unique column we have in the table. In our case, it's the ID column, and we are passing updated task ID here. Let's await for the synchronous task to be finished. And in the delete row, what we have to call is Supabase from table name and then delete function. And for the deletion also, we need to identify the unique row that needs to be deleted. So let's use the ID column, and we can pass the task ID that needs to be deleted. So let's take the ID as input to the delete row function. So this is all we need in the database service file. Let's go into the home screen and let's update the UI. Here let's update it into a list view, and I'm going to use list view builder function since the list we are getting is dynamic. And let's return a list style here. And since we need to get hold of the tasks and also to maintain state, we are going to use simple set state. So let's convert it into a stateful widget, and then we can create a variable to hold the list of tasks. And let's update the UI to show a different message when the list is empty. We can just show the text as no tasks yet. Okay, now we'll save the changes, and here we can see the empty state message. Okay, let's add the item count. So it's task.length, and then I'm going to create another variable to hold the current task. And in the title, we can pass the current task and task name. And for the leading widget, I want to have a checkbox where I can tick off the tasks. So let's create that as well. And in the trailing widget, we want to have a edit and delete options. So for that, I'm going to create two icon buttons, one for edit and another for delete. And in the init state, we are going to fetch all the tasks. Here let's create 4 different functions to fetch, insert, update and delete. And in the fetch data function, to call any of these methods, we need database service. And now let's create another variable to hold the database service object. Now we can call the fetch data function. Here what it returns is list of tasks so that we can store that in the task variable we earlier created. And in the init state method, let's call this fetch data function. Since this is asynchronous function, let's add a post frame callback. Great. To test this out, let's add a new row into our task table. And I'm going to put some data here. Okay, let's refresh this one. Seems like we can't see the data. The issue should be okay. We have to update the state. Let's add a set state here and let's refresh. Okay, the issue is still there. Now the problem is that we haven't set any policies to our table. Let's create a new policy to allow anonymous users to read from our database. And here if you can see the to clause means we are allowing it to the public. Using clause, check for the condition we provide. Here we are providing true to allow it always without checking any conditions. Let's refresh the app now. We are still getting an error. Let's check what is the error. The error seems to be in the trailing widget. Okay, that is a row, so it takes up all the space. So let's add a size box to fix it. Let's refresh it. Okay, now we can see the data. And the next thing would be an add a way for users to add new tasks. So let's create a floating action button where we will show a dialog with a text field for users to enter a task and submit. And to get access to the value of the text field, let's create a text editing control and we can assign this control into our text field. And in the alert dialog, we need to have two actions. First one is to confirm adding the task. Second one is to allow users to cancel. So let's implement the insert data method. Here we want to create a task object with the task name user has entered. So default is done is false. And then we can call the insert row method in database service. Now let's wire this up with the button we earlier created. So here we can call the insert data method and let's test this out. Okay, as expected, we are getting this row violation error. Now let's create a new policy allowing anonymous users to write to our database. Let's add other two policies to update and delete as well. And I'll do a separate video on this policy so that you can understand it better. But in the basic sense, this using clause uses as a condition that we check, and since we are providing it as true, it gets passed through always. Now we have created all the policies for the all four operations. Back in the application, let's test this out. Seems like dialog is not closing upon clicking on the cancel button. Let's add that functionality as well as let's clear out the text field. Let's add the same thing after inserting data as well. Now let's refresh it. It's working fine. And after inserting data, we have to refresh the data. So let's add that code and let's rerun the application. And I'm going to add a new task. Okay, now we can see the updated result. So let's implement the update method as well. Let's implement the delete row function as well. Here what we need to give is the ID of the task. So let's take it as the input. Okay, that is done. So let's wire this up with the icon buttons we have. And after deleting, let's fetch the data again to get the updated data. And let's test this out. Okay, it's getting deleted. And now let's update the update row method. And I'm going to copy the same show dialog code from the add button. And we can rename the text to update. And we can keep the cancel functionality as it is, as nothing changes there. And in the update method, before anything, we have to pre-fill the text field with the value we already have. Now in the update button, we can call the update data function. And let's test this out. Seems like it's not changing. Let's find out the issue. Okay, it seems like we are not taking the controller value. Let's update it with the right value and let's test this out now. Okay, it's changing. And one thing is we have to clear out the text field once we are done with the update and the adding part. So let's set that code. And let's from beginning test this out for all the functionalities. And for adding part, let's add a task. It's working and then we'll add another task. And we can delete and we can update as well. Okay, it's all working fine now. And I'll keep the checkbox part open for you to implement and try to get it work with the update data method we have. And in this video, we have implemented all the CRUD operations with Supabase. And if you found this video useful, make sure to drop a comment in the comment section. That will really help me to make videos like this.